So do I need to call anything to order? Are we good? All right. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. Has everybody been having a good summer?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Thanks for sending me the connection. I had it yesterday evening there. When I go look for it today, I couldn't find it. So
That's the way it always is, isn't it, Phil? Always, every time. That happens to me literally every meeting. Today, my computer had shut itself down and my Zoom decided to do updates, but luckily I had the foresight to try it all out earlier. Usually it's like 9:58. I'm realizing that. Anyway.
Bill, a hint from me is email the meeting information to your home email address too. So if you can't find it one way, you've got two ways to find the link.
I always go to our website, to the trustees website every time.
Oh, that's another good idea.
Every single time I go to the trustees website, because then I got the agenda and everything right there. Anyway, I think that counts as welcome, which is our first item on our agenda is a welcome. I apologize in advance. I'm nursing some sort of a cough, and so every now and then I have to cough. Forgive me. So I'm hoping everybody got a chance to read the minutes, and we can approve those. Are there any thoughts on the minutes? No, we're good. So does that mean yes, we can approve the minutes?
Yeah, so you can approve them with no changes.
Cool. So we approved the June 2023 Outreach Committee meeting minutes with no changes. Thanks, everybody. So why don't we get to review our annual report?
I would be happy to do that. I'm going to share my screen. So
That's my favorite part. I gotta say, this is really exciting stuff. Get to see all the cool topics. It is, isn't it? It's really exciting.
I will go through this. Okay, can everyone see the annual report?
Oh,
Yes.
What a photograph.
Okay, there we go. So it's a little off center, but it should be big enough. Yes, the photo is delightful. That little sense of determination on there was an excellent pick. I don't know if you have a chance to see Ashley Atkinson from Library Marketing and Communications is also on your Zoom meeting today. So she's also available to answer any questions. Extra thanks to her and our graphic designer, G and Dennis, for all their hard work on this. We've been down a position for a little bit, so they put in even more extra time amongst the three of them. But
this is just beautiful. This photograph, you guys outdid yourself. This is the most beautiful cover photograph I've seen.
So your annual report is set up similarly to, actually, I will set up similar to last versions of this, where you've got your kind of table of contents, you have an introduction from your chair and from myself, and then it dives right into the actual content. So we tried to focus on some big highlights this year that we knew lots of people have been able to attend or think about or participate in, including the Lurton Library opening, the modifications, the hours for facilities, our recent customer satisfaction survey. We had so many branch anniversary events. We thought that would be a nice inclusion here as well. Plus a shout out to our dearly missed Rose Zuclo, who was our branch manager at the Access Services Library, and to her untimely passing last fall. A little shout out for her. And following that is a section really focused on our wonderful staff, including our staff day events that we had in person this year in collaboration with the Mary Riley Styles Library and Falls Church. Our winners of some staff awards, as well as big old lists of the staff excellence awards that you all honored and celebrated, and the foundation scholarship winners, because we ran out of room on the foundation page and we thought this would be a good addition for that section.
Great.
The remainder of your draft report is focused after the infographics on the different areas of your prior strategic plan. So we heard loud and clear your feedback from last year about the infographics and statistics. So it is hopefully more abbreviated this year and more clearly understandable, less kind of jargon thrown in there. And as you can see, we did pretty well last year. Our print circulation was up, our e-circulation was very up. Website visits and Wi-Fi remain strong. In-person visits to facilities are up almost 15% now, which is great. And a big number down here on the bottom right is our card holders. as people have been coming back into our facilities, we've seen a huge increase in registered cardholders. We now have almost 600,000 registered account holders across the county, which is half of the population in Fairfax, a big number. And then a little bit of additional info here. So you may have noticed as you reviewed this that we're using last year's strategic plan. And that's because your annual report splits the calendar year. It's it's the latter half of 2022 and the beginning half of 2023. So we wanted to make sure that this followed the same format of the strategic planning goals and value areas that you had for the beginning of the report period. Not that they're that much different from next year around, just so you understand that. So you have sections on access, which spoke about the updates to our ephemera collection, Realia, the Library of Things, the expansion of our summer reading adventure, a little blurb on being 1 year fine free. Innovation, which talks about the maker labs and launch pads, as well as an overview of some of the really great programming our branch and administrative folks have put on. A section on, civic engagement, including the release of Chris and Suzanne's book, The Desegregation of Northern Virginia Libraries, the second year of our Knitting for Charity program, and then a whole page spread dedicated to our collaboration and support for public health initiatives, including distributing COVID test kits, staff reception and awareness of Narcan training to help prevent overdoses, and our Cooling Center official designations this year. The fourth section focuses on technology. And while some of these are new, like our self-checkouts and our expansion of focus on digital equity, other pieces are highlighting some of the things that we've done for a while now, like our 3D printers, which now have a much larger fleet, and you can take them to almost, I was gonna say 2/3, but certainly over half of our branches at this point have 3D printers. Some branches even have several. I think Reston has three 3D printers at this point to keep up with the bevy of requests that come in. Members of the community can request and submit files to print, and staff will do that at no charge at this time. So they're used for children who are trying to print out minifigures to play games with, adults who are working on prototypes as they are developing their businesses, and people who just have really cool ideas that they want to visualize.
Which is so amazing.
And then our final keystone area within the strategic plan is around literacy. We had some amazing author events last year, which are highlighted here, not just standalone, but also in the author day. We continued our partnership for Fall for the Book. This year, they'll be turning 25 years old, so you'll see an even better spread on this next go around. And our first Poetic Musings competition, which featured the Fairfax County Poet Laureate coming in and headlining the ceremony. Oh, look, there in the bottom. There's several of you in a picture. We tried to find as many good pictures of trustees as we could to include in here.
I appreciate not using the ones that you can see are terrible pictures of.
Which are the good ones, you know. This spread talks about On the Horizon, so really focused on Patrick Henry, which is nearing the completion of its design phase. Separate and apart from your review of this document, we'll be speaking with the town council in Vienna the last Monday in September, and we'll be coming to your board in September as well. So we're hoping to wrap design on this and start construction documents in the fall. And then you see the new strategic plan. So in future iterations of your annual report, it will be templated around that, but we wanted to make sure we highlighted that in one step. The foundation has opted not to do their own annual report this year and is instead inserting a 2-page spread in this document to have the biggest impact and to both share it more widely with the reception that we have for this document. And then they can use this for their own mailers later if they want. So they've got some really great info there about their donors, the amount of consecutive donors they have, the Children's Summer Reading Festival, and the other great events they've had. But the Children's Summer Reading Festival was certainly our biggest event for them this year. The Lorton one, which was late June, had an attendance kind of about 1,200. Chantilly was more than that. It was a big day, and they had such amazing happy kids running around at both events. They're going to use this as a great launch pad for next year to do additional fundraising.
Great, that was a great idea.
Yes, they're very, very happy with it. And oops. And then, of course, our thank yous. So we have a page spread here thanking the friends groups. In prior iterations, we've pulled out a couple of specific friends, like the George Friends for their very generous donation to the system-wide summer reading, the Wrestling Friends for their very generous donation of ebook collection. And this year we thought it would be really nice to just do a whole page spread for the friends, because so many of them, while they don't give as much, as high an amount monetarily, the dollars that they give have huge impact. So we pulled some really special dollars that the friends gave and programs that they went towards, so that they've got one page that's just in thanks of the friends dollars. And then special dedications and the thank you to the trustees. We dedicated several spaces and items last year with all of your help, so those are documented here. And we have your happy smiling faces on the right side of the page as well, including, we should still have, oh yeah, but Jane's picture is still in there for the 1 month that she was on your board in fiscal year 23. So that is the end of the draft document. I can either keep it up and continue sharing if folks have specific areas you'd like to talk about or comment on, or I can close it if you want to see each other's faces in a larger effect.
Could you go back to the stats page just real quick?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to take another look at it. Thank you.
Yes. So page 1 of the statistics is focused on circulation. So it'll be a three-page spread with the infographics. So we tried to make it less busy this year. So we made each graphic piece a little larger. We kind of culled out some of the data that maybe wasn't as necessary. So page 1 focuses on circulation, which is increasing in all looks at it. Page 2, which is on our connections. So that is our website use, Wi-Fi use, physical visits to branches, and account registration and card visits. And then page 3 is some of the more miscellaneous info. It's a huge increase in volunteer hours as we've seen people get back to their normal lives and operations. A really big increase in program attendance as our wonderful staff have put on more events and programs in person. And then a very slight increase in our return on investment to the community. That's every dollar that the county pays into the library's budget, how much the community is actually getting back from that dollar. And we pull that specifically from the American Library Association's library value.
Thank you.
Ashley, is there anything I missed in here that you wanted to highlight to the board?
Yeah.
I think you got it all. I just we did the new thing is we included kind of a better explanation of what the return on investment and the value kind of come down to, because for the marketing department, who knows nothing about how libraries work other than the marketing side, it was we felt like it might be helpful to have that, and those came from the same guy who gives us all of our statistics. So
Doug.
I hope they make sense. I had to pare down what he gave me because he gave me paragraphs upon paragraphs. So if they don't make sense, please tell me and we will work on fixing them. But other than that, I think you covered everything. And like Jessica said, next year there will be a marketing director in place who will make this decision, but I imagine it'll go along the same lines, but with the new strategic plan.
Thank you, Ashley. Yes, most of the data that we get is from Doug Miller, who has presented to your board a couple of times now. And Doug is the king of data. So he gives us reams of it, and then we get to kind of squish it down sometimes into these little infographics you see here. Does anyone have a specific page you'd like me to go to, or commentary that you'd like to share?
Well, I have, Jessica.
Yeah.
I love the ROI, and I think that'll be really helpful for the fans in our upcoming campaign. And same thing with the thank you page. Once, next year, we should be able to put in a thank you to all the fans and advocates, friends and advocates. So that's great.
That is very helpful. And Ashley and I should both mention as well, the library marketing department does an amazing job of tracking all of these things that we do through the course of the year. They can then be slotted into your annual report. So we already have a tracker developed for fiscal year 24 with things that are ongoing. Okay. So we can insert a note that for the future thank you page, we'd like to make a stronger call out for the fans and draft a little bit extra there. Thank you, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. Does anybody need to have any other questions on that? I'm good. We're good. I have a question, Jessica. Fran just told me she has to leave in a few.
No,
And-
5 of 10. I'm here. I mean, 5 of 11. Sorry, I put that wrong in there.
Oh,
Oh,
I understand.
yeah,
Okay,
it's-
cool. Then we're good. I thought you meant in 5 to 10 minutes. I'm sorry.
Hey, yeah,
Sorry,
my
I just wanted to
mistake.
make sure
I
that
wasn't clear. Sorry.
so those questions that I wanted to just pose to the group, I wanted to see if we could bump it up. We don't need to bump it up if she's going to be here. We're good. Okay,
Sorry.
cool. Cool.
With numbers, but what time is it? Wrong.
I know. I was like, well, sometimes we gotta go. So
No,
that's
it was just a typo. It wasn't my brain. No.
I think we're at talking points then.
So before we jump to the talking points, I do need a motion from this group to shift this up to the full library board as a draft at your September meeting for their consideration.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
I
I,
Thank you all.
Aye.
You will obviously still have time if you have any, like minutia, like if you notice any spelling or error issues that we mispunctuation. Ashley and I went through with a very fine tooth comb, but you can only read the same document so many times before your eyes start to blur. So if you notice anything, please let us know. We will not take offense, we promise. Thank you for that. I will be sure to get that included in the next work packet. So your next excuse me. Your next agenda item is your fall talking points. So I will share my screen again. Apologies for the delay. And okay, is the size large enough for everyone?
yes, fine.
So quarterly talking points, things that we thought you all might like to highlight. The first is our circulating board game collection. You may recall that 4 or 5 months ago, we shared with this group that we were going to pilot a board game collection at the Centerville, George Mason, and Sherwood regional libraries. Those have gone incredibly well, but those collections don't shift between branches. They only stay at Centerville, George, and Sherwood. Part of that was to see how cumbersome it would be for staff to transact those items. Like if they brought in a clue board game to count all the cards and make sure the pieces were all there, hasn't been that bad. And we've had a really strong reception from the public. So we are expanding our circulating collection to all full service locations, not including access services. We anticipate that the rollout is going to be completed in fall, so October, November-ish. And the same circulation policies still apply. Folks can check them out for 3 weeks, same as books. They are renewable. They'll circulate between locations now since we have them all across the board. Across the board means. So we're pleased that this one is expanding. It was a kind of a low-hanging fruit for us, the board game aspect. We already have board game groups at some of the libraries, so expanding it to circulating collections made a lot of sense.
Jessica, do they have to be returned to the branch they check them out at?
So, excuse me. So right now they do because we haven't completed expansion to all the locations. I think it is still TBD on whether or not if you check one out at Fairfax, if you have to return it to Fairfax, it's likely that because we'll have them at all, that they'll float, you can return them anywhere. But the finalization of that policy is not there.
Okay,
There is also a LibGuide page that has all of the circulation rules and the types of games that are available. That will be updated when that's finalized as well. Okay, I'll move on to the next set of bullets, which is Knitting for Charity. So this is not a new program for this. This is our 3rd year. You saw a blurb about this in the report you just reviewed. But we're incredibly proud of this program, and we think that this would make for good fodder for your elected officials, newsletters, and social media posts. Last year when we did this, we were able to donate over 700 items. That was hats and gloves and a couple of other things that people made to Shelter House, which supports individuals and families experiencing homelessness and domestic violence. This year, we are expanding, so our donations can be accepted to any branch, and we offer a limited supply of yarn and tools at about half the branches as well. The really exciting part of this year is we figured we shouldn't limit this to just experienced knitters. We wanted to open up to folks that want to learn. So we're kicking it off with learn to knit and crochet classes at Centerville in September and October. Registration's not open yet. I looked because I might want to do that myself. I'm not experienced in either of those handicrafts, but this has been just a delightful program to be able to offer. It's something that the community really likes doing. It's something that, you know, keeps your hands occupied, and you have a thing at the end that you can donate that really benefits a member of the community. We're really pleased with how this moves in about. Similar to the board games, we do have a link in our look guides that talks about where you can drop off items, where you can pick up yarn, when you can sign up for classes, and that is all live.
Jessica, with the you said the tools and the yarn are donated? Are they
Right.
donated? Or do we purchase them? How does that happen?
So we have a limited supply of yarn available at about half of our branches. So people that come in early,
name unavailable.
people that come in early when the program just opened on September 11th should be able to get like a skein of yarn. Last year, we had some branches where people had donated like needles. I don't know for sure if we're gonna have some of those this year. So for experienced folks who already have those supplies, they're good to go. For the classes that are coming up at Centerville, you have to have them.
And do we have running? Remember at the makers thing, they had the makers event, they had that quilters table. Do we have knitting groups? Just I was assuming we must have knitting groups. 'Cause
Yes, we have both in-person and virtual knitting groups that meet and collaborate together. I'll add a note to the item on this one. Availability. Just so that we've got some clarity around that too.
And I can add a little bit.
Absolutely,
One
thank
thing
you.
that are going to have to change. So I learned this morning that it won't just be at Centerville. So they're reworking the classes because the person who was supposed to run them has left the organization. So they are not up anymore on the calendar, but they are in the process of finding other ones and expanding to more branches instead of just Centerville. So
Perfect, thank you, Ashley. Well, the timing on this should work out fine. The board packet for you all will not be going out until September 3rd. So hopefully we'll have reaffirmed where those trainings are going to take place and can update this for your colleagues. Thank you. Next one is super exciting. We've hosted several book festivals. We participate in Fall for the Book, but we've never done something quite of this scale before. So we're hosting our first ever local author book festival on September 30th at Chantilly. And it's the reason I say it's first ever, because we've done local author events before, is because we're partnering with the foundation, and it's going to start with a VIP Beyond the Book event with local author David Baldacci. Those will be paid tickets sponsoring the foundation, where you get to do a meet and greet with David Baldacci, talk to him about his books, and then it will transition into an author talk that he is giving to the general public. That talk will be available for both in-person, 100 setups, and 250 virtual participants. And then following that, he will be leading the troops outside, and I think we've got between 40 and 50 local authors set up right now for a local author book festival to follow his kind of keynote events. As it says in here, this is co-sponsored by the foundation. This is a fundraising event for them to start with, but the majority of the event is just a free open event for the public. We think this is gonna be a great collaboration, similar to when we had Nikki Giovanni come out right before the pandemic. We anticipate really strong turnout for this one. Any questions or feedback? And then we've got a whole big page of author events. So I won't go through all of these. You can read them at your leisure and pick through the ones you're interested in, but we did want to continue with a theme from some of your past quarterly talking points, which is that we have lots and lots and lots of author programs. Some are in person, some are virtual, nonfiction, fiction, adult, children. You know, we had Eric Litwin out just 2 weekends ago to a host of happy kiddos. Most of those we have in the fall coming up are for adults, but there are some very exciting ones here, including one coming up very quickly, which is in partner with the Lucy Burns Museum down at the Morton Workhouse Center. And that one is Ulster Death, Suffragette suffrage cookbooks, food, and the battle for women's right to vote, including local Girl Scouts dressed out as notable suffragettes, which I think is adorable. So if you have a chance and a little extra time this coming Saturday, that's gonna be a lot of fun. And because we didn't want to leave out everything that's going on with the Fall for the Book events, we included, thank you to Ashley, a listing of every library affiliated Fall for the Book author program. Some of them are sponsored by local friends groups like Poetic Friends, Richard Bird, Oakton, and City of Fairfax. Some of them are supported by the foundation. I think that is on the next page, A Life in Books and Film, featuring author Nick Hornby. And our very own Chris and Suzanne will be doing, Chris Barbershak and Suzanne Roth here in the Virginia Room, will be doing one featuring libraries for all. So that's more of an FYI for folks that are interested, or if you'd like to share ones that are going on in your districts. The last bullet we included this year is about the Tyson's Corner Community Services Room, which had its grand opening just a few weeks ago now. This is a space that was really spearheaded by Supervisor Halchick. She wanted to find a better way to make community connections that were really embedded and not required people to come into county facilities. So this is, a relatively small space, 3,000 square feet, but different county agencies and nonprofit partners are operating it. They're operating it at different points in time. So the library is offering it on Wednesdays, twice a month, in order to provide teen services. It's mostly being run by Edifuturo, which is a local nonprofit focused on helping students, and NCS, Neighborhood and Community Services, and Department of Family Services, Domestic Violence Services is also operating centers. So we will have programming starting very quickly right around the corner in September. That was your very long, your very long quarterly talking point this go round, but we wanted to include everything because there's so much good stuff happening.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So any edits that I can make, I have 2 questions that staff will follow up on, both on the Knitting for Charity, one about the availability of knitting needles and the other about the transition of locations based on that staffing location.
Can I ask just about the David Baldacci paid event? Are we contributing to that, to bringing him?
No, so the foundation had already contracted with him for an event last fall or winter. It didn't end up happening. So now they're transitioning their work with him over to this event. So they've already worked out whatever they need to through his agency company to have the event going on. And the $75 ticket sales will be a fundraiser for them. And that's just that very slim portion at the beginning. It's 11 to noon is his portion of that. Yes, his is 11 to noon. And then it generates some transitions into the public office. Okay. Well, staff will make those updates and we'll make sure that they're included in your board packet for the full board in September. Sujatha, I thought you have had one thing you wanted to talk about under
Yeah.
other business.
I just wanted to bring something up to the group. We had talked at our last meeting, and I don't remember how many of you were there. I think Suzanne was there, and Fran was there. But we talked about how to better work with the fan group, how outreach, and because we have a similar agenda or a similar mission, let's say, but slightly different, right? So like the way that I was that I sort of articulated at that meeting, for those of you who weren't there, and Sue was there too, so maybe most of you have heard it. So just I was thinking that fan really comes from like we know people, so it comes like we're here, we know people, and then they know people, and it comes like that. But outreach really is library level, and it goes like this, right? So we're not really, it doesn't originate with us and who we know personally and making those connections and building a network like this. It kind of starts at a branch and comes out like this. So, but we have a very similar mission, which is, of course, to increase awareness about the mission of the library and what our library does for us and what the return on investment is for our library. And we want to make sure that we articulate that to our board of supervisors and to our community so that when we need funds and ask for funds, that they are happy to fund us because we do so much for the community. That's really the mission, both of our shared missions, right? On some level. So what are the ways in which we can work together for best effect? And that I apologize. There were three ways that Jessica articulated this nicely. I'm just going to read from what she said. So there's passive feedback that's gathered through the community boards with specific prompts. So we could, from the we can ask our libraries, we can just sort of what people give us from the library. We can also do something that's proactive. We can have listening sessions where we ask particular questions, or we come into a community and ask questions and ask specifically for feedback. And we can do a survey, another survey that's more refined. Of course, it's a lot of work for staff, but to gather specific feedback on specific questions. So I wanted to just bring to the, more of you here than were at that meeting, and we have not yet brought this to the full board. I haven't talked about it with Brian, but just what your thoughts were on whether we should pursue one avenue, whether we should, try to figure out a way to do all three, how we should bring this forward. Do you think I should talk to Brian first and just get his thoughts before we bring it to the board? I just wanted to bring that to you, and it's not on our agenda because I was remiss in getting to Jessica's question, so it wasn't on the agenda, but I wanted to at least bring it up to you, especially while Fran is here. So just get your thoughts on what we should go pursue first.
I put all of the options that Sujatha just shared in your chat box so that we can save her vocal cords, because
Thank you.
You need to take a sip of water, lady.
That's exactly what I'm going to do right now.
Yeah, and this is a follow-up from your board's discussion at your last in-person outreach committee meeting. You just kind of tightened up the document. I think what Sujatha was hoping for was some support maybe from the committee if you want her to check with your board chair about engaging in the music areas. If FAN is focused on reaching people maybe kind of outside of our general user base, people that you all know, your personal connections, how can the library board better connect with our library users? And then there's those kind of features.
Because we really do, if we think about it like that, sort of like we're hoping to funnel into the same kind of result, but we really do have a different, it's different. It's just a completely, the outreach committee hopefully is reaching people that we don't even know. We don't know them, they don't know us, they don't know that there's a library board, and have no idea what goes on behind the scenes that allows various programs to be happening, but have, maybe more than our specific friends, considering the way the boards and trustees tend to work, much more need and much more use of our library, So it would be nice to, I think
I like the idea of the listening sessions, maybe call them meet your trustee or something, meet your trustee and director or something like that. And possibly even include the local branch friends chair.
That's a good idea too.
Making the friends feel more included.
How feasible would it be to have to put these listening sessions together, the first focus groups? Would it be easy to get people to come, or?
I think it depends on how you want to structure it. If you wanted it to be just like a tabling event. So like I think about Tyson's, right? Because I think many of you have been to the Tyson's branch before, and you can kind of picture you walk in and there's a pretty sizable lobby before you either go left of meeting rooms or you go straight into the meeting service area. So if you did it simply as a tabling event where a trustee and a staff member like myself or Kevin were there with you, and you just asked people as they came in, like, hey, what brought you to the library today? Did you know about this, that, or the other? Like, I'm your trustee, did you do these things? That is not a lot of that's not a lot of uptake for staff. We would post it in our calendar events if we still wanted to. We could help you publicize it in advance by creating material that you can then disseminate to your elected bodies and networks. If you actually want to do focus groups where you invite people in advance, that's a lot better. I see Priscilla's hands up.
Thanks. Hopefully this isn't too much of a sidebar, but as I'm listening to Sujatha, I'm thinking, you know, what I consider the outreach meetings, the content of what we're reaching out is directed by Jessica and Ashley and library staff. And I'm wondering what the content is for FAN, if there's a formal or a designated, like, is it the exact same content? Because I think a FAN is more of an advocacy group and outreach is more of an informational and what's the word? It's like activating, but not activism. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's a really good way of putting it. I mean, as one who sits on both, and allow me to just like, this is my take. I think that Fran had a great idea on how to just like increase our funding and make sure that we, you know, sort of did a better job of advocating, of activism, let's say, in that sense, like a real activating, right? And it worked, which is great. You know what I mean? It actually worked, which it's astonishing when you have an idea, you put it into play and it works. And very much, it's like, you know, though they have a different sort of goal, ultimately, I do think that that's a really good way of putting it. Like, outreach doesn't do that. Outreach is not trying to figure out a way to get more money for the library directly, right? Outreach is just hoping that you could make, I think, hoping that you could make an argument with the public that's using the library of all of the various things that are at the library, so that there's sort of a public awareness of how important the library is to us that could maybe, you know, domino into activism, let's say, that would result in better funding for the library. So the methodology is totally different, I think, and our meetings are different too, because like Fran will come with a whole 15 sheets of whatever it is that she's been on her mind about how to get this done, and that's not the way outreach works. Outreach really is staff telling us what the things are that we are doing so that we can share it with our supervisors, with whomever, and generate interest in those programs. And, you know, that's a very different thing than what Fran was trying to do.
And I think that, you know, that asking people, what would you like to see the library do, in some way fits right into, because the committee said, here's what we're offering, you know, it's an informative. And this way, this is the other side of it. Like, tell us, you know, we've been telling you what we do. How do you like what we're doing? Or would you like us to do more of this and less of that, or more, you know, it's more, it fits in with it. Yeah. And it's very different from the fans.
And really our target audience, just for the initial outreach, target audience is so different, right? With outreach, you really are trying to reach a public that we don't know.
I was just going to say, back to the how to do this. I know one method that as a former trainer, with Post-it notes, people could just write down their idea and slap it up on the wall and they're done. And I don't know, because I'm trying to think, like, when people come to the library, they're kind of focused on, I'm here for a purpose. I want to do this. I don't know if I want to stop and talk to somebody. And then signing up for a meeting to come and talk about it might be more productive. Or the old-fashioned suggestion box, you know, because we're sort of an introverted, you know, for our introverted audience, library users, I don't know, they might, well, you know, I've always thought it would be great if you did this, and then they could just drop it in there. Those things then aren't discussion, and I don't know if we're looking for discussion or for you know, just tell us something that you like and we can look at that and evaluate and stuff like that. I like Suzanne's idea too, and that kind of came up, that kind of a thing came up in our meeting with the friends, as to having a trustee at a book sale to answer questions from people about becoming advocates, but that's a little teaser for later what we did. So that's my thoughts on, sort of the melding or the side by side of outreach and fan.
Well, and to follow off of that, the first option that your committee had started discussing last time was a very passive version of that, where you just have like a big board or something up in a lobby or an entry point, and you have a prompt like, what are you coming in for today? Or what do you wish the library did? Or how can your trustees help you? And then you allow people to write their own commentary on it. There's no staff or trustee intervention on that. So that is certainly the most passive option because it doesn't require a lot of time on either side's part. So that is certainly one variation if you all want to consider that. After Sujatha talks with Brian, which he's yes about this too.
The collection though and collation of that research wise, that must be a huge undertaking if you have the stickies on the, I mean, just thinking as a qualitative research project, right? When you have that method of data collection,
yeah,
I'm not saying that that's not something you guys are not always looking to do. As surveys, you have to do it as well. Certainly revamping the survey would be a huge research question that, that's I'm not ever trying to increase. I mean, I know that I'll say something and all of a sudden people are put to work and it makes me feel really bad. Like, oh my God, I just said something and now everybody's, got this whole project going. So I'm never trying to do that. Accidentally, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
But the research requirement of that to make it into usable data is significant.
The first two I think are reasonable. So if this body is looking at recommending to Brian that outreach wants more community feedback to assist their work and fans' work in the future, passive gathering or even listening sessions, the data that's generated from that, I feel very confident that staff could assimilate without a lot of undue burden. A new survey is a lot. That one not only would take money, but would take a lot more staff time. So either of the first ones, unless you all are on a super time crunch, should be something we could take off in support of it.
I think it'd be really cool because I get kind of wonky, but to see like at the difference between the branches, like in one part of the county, they said, well, we'd really like more of X. And then over here, we're really tired of X. We want more of Y. That would be very interesting data, I think, to see.
Yeah, that is always interesting. And also like sometimes, just something I've noted when you're doing research in a demographically wide pool, one of the issues really is that like a lot of people in a particular demographic in a particular area who use a service do not even know what to ask for. We are all in that situation where you have not, because of your own limited life experience in whatever area, we all have it. You just don't even know to ask or think that such and such a thing could possibly exist. Never would have occurred to you because you didn't know such things were possible. So you don't think to ask it. Whereas other people in other demographics, like they are asking for all kinds of stuff because they've seen so much more stuff, right? So sometimes you can find evidence of that when you do these sort of like, what various people with various life experience, different varied life experiences ask for or tell you would be a good, it's lots of good information anyway.
Yeah, and then you just have to decide like how long a time period would you gather the information. At the end of the day, who will record it and wipe the slate clean for the next day and all that those kind of details. I mean, it will take effort.
Mm-hmm.
So for outreach, are we trying to reach out to non-users too? Or is it mostly just to the users who are already coming to the library?
Ideally, you would increase usership, one would imagine. Ideally, if you were to find a way to reach non-users. I think there's a lot, they're just untapped populations. They're just simply untapped populations who just don't know. And like via the work you do, there will be people that are recent immigrants, let's say, who have just no idea and then through your organization, and then through your membership as a trustee, and the information overload that you get on a monthly basis, you will be able to translate to people who would not necessarily know. And all of us have those pools of community that we, through our involvement in this as a trustee, we can access. So yeah, those are non-users right now who are just chomping at the bit, and they don't even know it, for all of the stuff that is available to us by our public library system. And that's a reality. So I think that the mission of outreach is to find, through legitimate means, not aggressive means, but through legitimate outreach, people who don't know about our libraries.
One thing that occurs to me from some marketing class I took is getting people to come back. And I think like if it's the first time you've come to the library, is it welcoming enough that you will come back? And it really depends on the time, and it depends on a lot of things. But it seems to me that that might be an attractive feature. If the first time you walked into a library, somebody was asking you, what would you like the library? You might think, well, this is a pretty interesting place. That's kind of a welcoming thing. You don't usually think of a survey as welcoming, but it might, spark someone like, I'll come back. Because sometimes when I go into a library, it's really busy, and there's a lot going on, and it just feels like this is a really happening place. Other times it's just really quiet and nobody notices you, and that's also good. I know so that whole thing of non-users are not going to be walking in the door, but there might be a first-time user, and it might spark them to come back. I don't know.
So I was thinking, looking at option 2, having those listening sessions, I think you had it scheduled at library branches or other community locations. I guess it'd be the other locations that would kind of
find that
be targeted towards the non-users, right?
Yeah.
So how feasible would that be? It'd be much easier to do it at the library, of course.
And is that something that's within our purview? Is that something that is are there rules about what we can do, where we can be?
It depends on what you all are what kind of data you're trying to garner to start with. So if what you're trying to do to start is gather information and data from current library users to help support the work that FAN is doing to moderate the budget in the future, then you're probably going to want to stick with in-library listening sessions. If what you're trying to do is generate information about how to get additional people to use the library who could then become supporters, that's a longer term game. That would take a little bit more logistical planning. There are certainly some sites that might lend themselves easier to that, like Lorton, right? So Lorton is a single site location that has a library and a park and community center. So it doesn't take that much effort for us to lug a table down to the park and ask people why they're playing at the playground but not coming to the library. If you wanted to set it up at like a grocery store, that's different, and there would be some additional questions that we'd have to field in advance, as well as scheduling staff for offsite work to help. So it just depends on what your goal is, right?
Anyway, I mean, it's 10:50 and I don't want us to belabor this point. Just everybody should be thinking about it. If you have thoughts about it, and if you want to know, like, if you want me to talk to Brian, like, I don't know what my next step is necessarily, Jessica, what I should or shouldn't be doing to move this forward. But just bringing up the thought, because there are a lot of ways to go about it. And
agreed. So if this group is in favor of something, whatever version of those 3 options, or a whole different 4th one, if you were in favor of having the outreach committee spearhead some kind of community engagement that could run parallel to the work that FAN is doing with kind of outreach to focus on the budget, then you don't need like a formal vote or anything. You all can just come to some concurrence at this meeting, and then Sujatha can talk with your board chair, Brian, to see if he is also supportive of this. at that point, then I suppose to Jackie, you and I would reconnoiter on this topic and figure out both your next outreach committee meeting, timeline for making this happen, and some suggestions for this group to consider at your next meeting about how to actually implement this. Because if you go with option one, it's really just a lot of thought work, like what do you all want your prompts to be, that then staff could effectuate for you in the branches. If you want to do option two with actual listening sessions, you're going to have to sign up for times to come and be in the branch. So that would depend on your schedule, the branch schedule, that kind of things. But all of them are very doable within, some lead time.
I'd like us to do, before we do anything, talking about a refined survey, we should really find out like whether a refined survey is, whether that juice is worth the squeeze, as my husband likes to say, like, because that's a lot of work and, like you said, money that we have to put into it. And if we're not even at a point of knowing what the right questions are to ask, who to ask them of, and how to distribute, and who will collate, and what will be done with that, that is a research project that we may not be even at that point yet. So before we do that, I'd love us to really think about other things that are less.
You have a wonderful asset on this committee, and Priscilla, who was part of the, I don't even remember what the committee was called, but you were the chair of the committee that did the board's last community out. I can't remember what he was called at this point. Well, do you remember?
I don't remember. I remember the work. I don't
Yes.
remember the name of it.
Yes, but in that one, we actually contracted with an outside company to do the survey. So it was in multiple languages and it was provided by phone and online. And if I'm remembering correctly, the cost was
A lot.
20 or 30 or 40,000.
It was quite a bit, I think, but what it did provide that I thought was, beyond the idea of ensuring that the questions and, the process that we went through to figure out, well, what do we want to know, having that be facilitated by an outside party. And then, but even more helpful, I thought, was on the other end, where the results were shared in a way that I don't think that we could have analyzed on our own. For example, connecting to our county demographic data and then what the data in the survey told us, and providing some trend information about who our users currently are and what are the main reasons why someone isn't a user. So I found it really helpful. I wonder, I'm sure we still have that information, even though, it's too dated for us to have like decision points on it, but it might, going back to it, might spark us to focus in on what it is that we actually want to know or do, versus having just a broad, this was like a broad, and it was like a multi-month process, but maybe there's some aspect that we might want to dig in a little deeper.
That's good. That's good information. Actually,
So looking at this group of folks, I think that you and Suzanne were the only ones on the board at that time. So I will find that old one and just send it around so that folks have it. I am sure it's archived somewhere. But you're right, that was 7.5.
Yeah, it's probably 150 pages too. So
Yeah,
no one
yeah.
panic, but there's an executive summary. So
There it is. I will
think
find
that the issue that I'm really personally, I'll just say that I think just in terms of circulation and usership post-COVID and now, it's like totally different world, is electronic, and that really has so much to do with the work that that electronic, whatever the committee is called, that's doing the ebooks committee. Yeah, right. Ebooks that is the way that so many people are interacting with it. Clearly, the uptick is so much, and we don't really have information on that and whether people even know about that. And it's like it could even bolster a case for supporting monies toward that. Like when you have to wait literally 30 weeks or 40 weeks for a book, it's just not viable. For an audiobook, it's not viable. So it's an interesting question that won't be covered in that. In the old survey, and it's just such good new information to have to make a case for something else that we're trying to do to support our libraries. anyway, we're at 10:56, and I know that there was something else that Fran had said friends had to leave regarding her friends meeting.
I can
So
check on
regarding
that.
this, would you say? Yeah,
I
so
can
regarding
check.
this, to
Yeah.
close this subject out, would you guys, what would you like me to do? What do I have permission from you all to do with moving forward? This, should I just talk to Brian? What would you like?
Well, I think you start, talking to Brian, and I like the idea of it. Is there some way, like in gathering information, the thing I'm thinking about, we have the friends group, so you want information. However, we reach out to the president or whatever they're called, the leader of the friends groups, and I think we could get a lot of information. And then again, there are different, communities. Let's say the Afghan community, different groups that are coming in, that we could probably try to make a connection with them to see how we could get their group to participate or learn more about the libraries.
Well, I think a lot, that is what we did in that survey 7 years ago. We reached out to various ethnic groups in the community, seniors, that kind of thing, low-income people, centers. I think at this point, I would support more doing the first 2 items, passive feedback and some kind of listening sessions before we move on to something bigger. That would be my suggestion. And if Sujatha wants to talk to Brian about that, I think that's a great idea.
That would be the process before I would bring it to the board anyway, right? We get to talk to Brian. So yeah, why don't we just say that I'm going to do that, because
Okay.
I can't go any further without my doing that. So I'll talk to Brian. I think that we can get a lot of the information.
Do you want me to report on Fran's item as well?
Yes, please.
And it's a really good tie-in, Phil, to what you were talking about, because Fran was going to provide an update on the work of FAN, which doesn't meet again until September 26th. However, she and I recently attended the Friends of the Ruston Regional Libraries board meeting last week, and she used that as an opportunity to kind of test roll out how to engage the friends groups more in the work of FAN, because those are folks that are already Uber users of the library. They're already incredibly supportive. We kind of know they're on board. And Ruston is a large enough group. She thought that would be a really good test case. So they were, as you'd expect, very supportive. They were looking for a little bit more information about if FAN and the library board does engage more fully with all of the friends groups. What are we actually asking them for? Like, what is a timeline of when we might be asking things? What would they be provided in advance, like the draft emails and letters? But they were very jazzed about it and hopeful that that we would be able to move forward some good change for the library through their support. So I think Fran was pretty happy about it. Yeah, she was
Still in meeting.
She was working on her notes from that as follow-up for them. So I think she might use that as a template for other groups as well about how they can support the initiative going forward. In addition to just what we've asked of all the other FAN members, it was also, hey, could you pitch in some money for things like pins or hats or buttons, so that when folks, our fans, are going to public engagement meetings or budget meetings, it would be a visible demonstration of their support. So I think she was pretty happy with how it started, and is going to continue talking about it with the FAN committee at their next meeting.
Great. So it's so nice to do library. I gotta say, like, it's just so pleasing. Every meeting is just like great. Oh, it's just so great. Anyway, I really, really appreciate also, Jessica, that you're sharing with us in your last. I wasn't there at the meeting, so it was I don't even remember whether it was tied to the July meeting, which I missed, but the threats to the library national summary of that stuff. When you see it all, it's really shocking, and that makes me feel like just so protective of the library. You're like,
yeah,
thank God we're here is all I can say. And there's so many people who aren't, and there's just so many people who are not. And
well, I'm going to be providing a kind of a intellectual freedom update at your full board meeting in September, but I thought it would be handy just to compile some of the challenges that are happening both locally and across the nation for public and school libraries, because they are mounting. There's always interest, appropriate interest in the things that people are reading and what they choose to use, but it's increasing at a higher expediency than I think many of us thought was going to happen. So I just want you all to be informed. I do think that we're incredibly fortunate here in Fairfax and Northern Virginia to an extent that we have elected officials and boards like yours that are supportive of our baseline mission, which is not accurate everywhere. So, I appreciate you all. Thank you.
We really, really appreciate you as well. Just the threats out of Texas of closing whole school library systems is just like, it just makes your heart like it goes so quickly. Once you start making those arguments publicly, it goes so quickly. We lose everything so fast, and before you know it, you can't claw it back. So it's just, it makes you like, that's why it's really good to work on letting everybody know how much we get out of our libraries. So it's 11:02, and I think that we are done with what we needed to do. And if it's okay with everyone, we can adjourn our meeting. Yeah. Okay. So
Excuse me. I move.
so Phil, would you like to second?
Oh, I seconded.
Oh, you seconded. Okay.
Double second.
Double second. Okay, so we're all good, and I will